Hello everyone, and welcome back to lesson 3 of the Joann Stitch Along. In today's lesson, I'm going to be making with you the border of the blanket. So by now, I'm hoping that you're done with all of your triangles and that you have them joined. So your blanket, it's starting to look like a blanket now. You have everything ready to go and start your border. The border it just gives such a beautiful touch to the blanket. We only have to pay attention because the border is zigzag border. You need to pay attention to the decreases and the increases on each side, but that it's obviously everything explained in the video. So you will need your PDF pattern as well to make sure that you can see in the diagram where the stitches are placed. And for the border, you will need your 8mm crochet hook, tapestry needle, and scissors. Now, let's get into today's lesson. Okay, so for the purpose of this video, I have made this tiny version of the blanket just so you guys can see it better on the frame and it's not huge. So, of course, you're gonna have a much bigger blanket with more rows and stuff, but again, this is just a mini version to be able to show you exactly how the border is done. So we're gonna begin in here with a top edging and then a bottom edging with 8 rows and then 3 rows all the way around the blanket. So we're gonna begin with one of the top edging, and we're gonna start here on the corner of your blanket. Grab your crochet hook and your corresponding color, which in my case is the pink. If you're making version 1 or version 2, the color will be different. So now you're gonna start in the corner of your blanket, bring up the yarn, and you're going to begin with a chain 3. Make sure to grab the tail so it doesn't move. You can pull it a little bit to make sure it's nice and secure in here. And at the beginning of every row, we're going to start with a decrease just so that we keep the blanket nice and straight. And for this row only, we're going to be working in the back loop of the stitch. So we're gonna make our decrease in the back loop of the stitch only. So we insert our hook in one stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, go to the next stitch, the back loop again, insert, bring up the yarn, yarn over, pull through 2. We should have 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all the loops. That's how we have the first decrease. And now you're going to make 1 double crochet in each of the next 15 stitches. We're still working in the back loop of the stitch only, so continue making your double crochet all the way until you have completed 15 stitches. And remember that you can follow along with the PDF pattern and the crochet chart as well. So now we got to the corner of the triangles, which we're gonna call the peaks of the triangles in here. We're gonna call them peaks and valleys just so we identify better. So in the chain space of the triangle, you are going to make 2 double crochets, 1 in each chain. So we did 1 in here, and we're going to make 1 in the next chain. We are here in the middle, and you're going to chain 2. Go to the next chain space from the triangle and place 1 double crochet in 1 chain, and then another double crochet in the next chain, and we have created now our first peak of the top of the blanket. So now you're going to continue with the double crochets in the back loop only for another 15 stitches down until we get to the valley. So here we're gonna make our first valley. We have the last 2 stitches before the chain space from the triangle. So in these last 2 stitches, we're going to create 1 decrease. And the decrease is just making one stitch out of 2 stitches. So we have the first stitch, go to the next one. You should have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all those 3 loops. We have the first decrease. Now we're gonna decrease another time between the chain space from one triangle and the chain space from the other triangle. So we have our first stitch, which correspond to one of the chain spaces, and now we go to the next chain space. We have the 3 loops and pull the yarn through, and we have the next decrease. And we're gonna make one last decrease in the next 2 stitches available in here, which is the one right after the chain space. And we're still working on the back loop of this stitch only. So make your next decrease. And now you have created your first valley. Now you're gonna continue the same sequence all the way up to the next peak, the same thing, and then once you get to the next valley, you're gonna do the exact same thing all the way across the top of your blanket. We're gonna see it one more time. Once you get to the peak, the next peak, we have the 2 spaces from the triangles. So you're going to double crochet in the first chain and double crochet in the second chain. Then you're going to chain 2, go to the next chain space from the next triangle and repeat. And again, continue the sequence with the peaks and the valleys all the way across the top of your blanket until you get to the last 3 stitches. In here we have the last 2 stitches and then the chain space. So in the last 2 stitches, we're going to make a decrease exactly the same as we did at the beginning of the blanket. And then the last chain space that we have in here, we're going to make 1 double crochet. That's how we're gonna end every single row and how we're gonna start every single row. So we have completed row 1 in here, which is basically the setup row. Now for row 2, you're going to cut your yarn, bring up the new corresponding color, which in my case is the creamy one. And you're going to join this new color to start working with it. And my favorite way to join is inserting the hook in the last 2 loops of this stitch that I just made. Then bring up the new color just like so. Pull the last color and we have the yarn perfectly placed. So to begin the row 2, you're going to chain 3, pull a little bit in here so it doesn't move, turn your blanket, and again we're going to start with the decrease. So the chain 3 will always count as 1 double crochet. So you're going to go to the next 2 stitches and make your decrease. This time we're working in the whole stitch, not the back loop only. We're working with the whole stitch. So you can crochet as normal, make your decrease, just like so. And now this row will be with eyelets, which we're going to make a chain, skip a stitch, and in the next stitch you're going to make a double crochet. Now chain 1, skip a stitch, and double crochet in the next one. And continue doing this all the way up until you get to your peak. And also good to mention that every chain that we're making counts as 1 stitch, okay? Once you get to your next peak, you're going to chain 1 because it corresponds to the stitch that we have in here, and then in the chain 2 space you're going to double crochet 1, chain 2, and double crochet again in the same space. This is to create the peak. And now we continue with the pattern. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, and in the following one you double crochet. Chain, skip, double crochet. Chain, skip, double crochet. And you're gonna continue doing this all the way down until you get to your valley. Now that we got to the valley, I have in here my last 2 stitches before the middle of the valley, and I have my chain 1, so I need to skip the next stitch, and in here I have my next 2 stitches before the middle, which is going to be the one that I'm going to be doing, making the decrease. So we have the last 2 stitches before the middle of the valley. I'm going to decrease. Then the stitch that goes in the middle, it's a normal double crochet. And then the following 2 stitches are also a decrease. That's how we create every single valley. So we have in here our decrease, 1, 2, and yarn over, pull through the 3 loops, and we have created the valley. Now we can continue with the sequence. We chain 1, skip a stitch, go to the next one and double crochet, and repeat. Chain, skip, double crochet, chain, skip, double crochet, all the way up until you get to your peak, and you're gonna repeat the sequence all the way across the top of your blanket until you get to the very end, the last 3 stitches. We're here with the last 3 stitches. Remember that the chain, the turning chain, counts as 1 double crochet, so this one counts as 1 stitch. We have the last 2 stitches and the stitch that I skipped with the chain. So I have my chain, I skip a stitch, and then the second last 2 stitches, it's going to be a decrease. So I have these 2. I make my decrease, 1 and 2, pull through all 3 loops, and then the last double crochet goes in the turning chain right here. Never skip the turning chain because that counts as 1 double crochet. And now we're done with row 2. Now for row 3, we're gonna continue with the same color yarn, and we're gonna repeat the sequence all the way across, but we're making just double crochets this time, no eyelets. So chain 3, turn your blanket, and in here we need the next decrease, which in this case is gonna go in the next stitch and the chain space. The chain space will always count as 1 stitch, so never miss it, okay? Don't skip the chain space. So the decrease goes in the following stitch and the chain space. Now yarn over, pull through the 3 loops, and continue double crochets and following the same sequence for the peaks and valleys. And remember, never skip the chain space, that counts as 1 double crochet. So then the double crochet in the double crochet, and then double crochet in this space, in the chain space. Continue all the way up until you get to your first peak. Once you get to your first peak, in here we have this space, and the last double crochet in here, we're going to double crochet. And when we get to the peak, we're gonna do the same thing. We're going to make 1 double crochet in that chain 2 space, then chain 2, and then another double crochet in that same space. And then you're gonna continue 1 double crochet per stitch available. So double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the chain space, double crochet in the next stitch, and so on until you get to your valley, the last 3 stitches. So here I have my last stitches before the valley, and I have to make my decrease. So the decrease will go between the chain 2 space stitch and the next stitch. So I have 1, 2, I have my 3 loops, pull through, and then the middle stitch goes as normal, 1 double crochet, and then the next 2 stitches is also a decrease. So the next stitch and the chain space stitch. And now we have created the valley. Now continue again all the way up your next peak, all the way down your next valley, and so on until you get to the end of your blanket again. Once you get to the end of your blanket, you should have the last 3 stitches. So the 1 stitch is the chain space, and then the other one is a normal double crochet. So you make your decrease, and then the turning chain counts as 1 double crochet, so you make your last double crochet in that turning chain. And now we have completed row 3. Now onto row 4, which is also going to be a row with eyelets. We're going to do the same thing we did in here. So you're going to chain 3, turn your blanket, make your decrease in the following 2 stitches. So 1 and then 2. And now we start with the eyelets again. So chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next one. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next one, and continue all the way up until you get to your next peak. When you get to the peak, you're going to double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet in the same chain space. And then continue with the same sequence all the way down until you get to your next valley. So chain, skip, double crochet, chain, skip, double crochet in the next one, and all the way down to the next valley. Once you get to your next valley, and this is a little tip that I should have gave you guys a little while ago, but I forgot. It's to use a stitch marker to mark the middle stitch of the valley. This is gonna be super helpful as you're gonna know when the last 2 stitches before the middle comes. So I have my chain in here, then I need to skip this stitch, and then I have the last 2 stitches before the middle of the valley, which is going to be the decrease. So in these last 2 stitches, I'm going to make my decrease 1, 2, yarn over, pull through 3, and then I have the middle stitch of the valley, which you're going to double crochet and then mark it again so you know which one is the middle stitch. And then make your next decrease in the next 2 stitches. So we have 1 stitch and 2, and now we created a decrease. And now continue with the eyelets sequence, which is the chain 1, skip, double crochet in the next one, all the way across the top of your blanket with the next valleys and peaks until you get to the very end, the last 3 stitches of your blanket. Once we have the last 3 stitches, we're going to make our decrease between these 2 stitches. 1 and then 2, and then the double crochet in the very last stitch, which is the turning chain. Remember, the turning chain always counts as 1 double crochet. Okay, and once we're done with row 4, we're going to repeat row 3 and 4 all the way up until we're done with row 8. So we have in here 4, we need 4 more, and then you're going to repeat the same sequence that we did here on the top edging at the bottom edging of the blanket with your 8 rows. So now let's pretend in here that I made my 8 rows. Again, this is a smaller version to show you guys. So you're going to bring the next corresponding color, and we're gonna go all the way around the blanket, and this time we're only doing the solid double crochets, no eyelets. So the whole round, the 3 rounds that we have to make, are with just double crochets. So you're gonna bring in here your corresponding color for the first round around the blanket, which in my case is the pink. We join the color. And then we're going to start with, again, a chain 3. And I'm at the bottom of my blanket. This is the bottom edge of the blanket. We are gonna repeat the same pattern that we have been doing on the top and the bottom of the blanket. So we have our chain 3, then we're going to do the decrease between the next stitch and the chain space, and basically the same pattern and sequence that we have been doing with the peaks and valleys with the solid double crochet. You're gonna do that all the way across until we get to the very end of your blanket. Remember that the chain space counts as 1 double crochet. Continue doing this all the way across until you get to the very end of your blanket. Now that we have done the top, we're going to turn the blanket on this side, and we're gonna work on the side of the blanket. So in here we have the side of the rows that we did, and each side of these rows are going to have 2 double crochets. To do that, we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, go to the last double crochet or chain 3 in here, and you're going to make 2 double crochets per space, and it looks something like this. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets in that space, then go to the next stitch in here and make 2 double crochets again, go to the next row down here and 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. We have 1 more in here, which is the pink in my case, and I need to have another 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Then you are gonna get to the next 2 spaces of your triangles, and then this side in here where we have this side seam, which we did with the loose slip stitch. So we're gonna want to work in the back loop of the seam so that we have that nice edging, and then we're gonna repeat it on the other side. Okay, so we have the 2 spaces of the triangles in here, and we're going to place 2 double crochets in each space, making sure we are working once we get to the side seam in the back loop of the seam. So I have my 2 double crochets in one space, then my 2 other double crochets in the next space, working behind the seam. And then once we get to the actual triangle, we have 1 stitch, and you're gonna make 1 double crochet per each stitch. But remember that we're working in the back only, and here you can see it better. We're gonna work in the color bumps. The other one is hard to see because it's the same color as the seam, but basically you're gonna be working behind the seam just so it looks nice and we have the same look as the rest of the triangles that we have seamed, and it looks nice and cohesive. So it's gonna be a little bit hard. Insert your hook there behind and make your double crochet. You should have 1 double crochet per stitch. In here you're gonna be able to see it a little bit better because we have the colored triangle in here. So insert your hook in the colored yarn and then make your double crochet. So you're gonna have 1 stitch per stitch available, and then you should have the seam popping up on the top, which gives a very nice finished look. Continue all the way across until you get to the other side as well, and we're gonna repeat the same thing, 2 stitches per row. So we have row 1 in here. We're going to make 2 stitches, 2 double crochets, then we go to the next one, 2 double crochets, and all the way up until you are done with all the rows. You should have 2 per row. Once you get to the top, you're going to do your chain 3. You're gonna turn, and we're gonna work on the top of the blanket as well. And here we usually have the chain 3 to begin the row, but because we're working in the round, we're going to make the double crochet instead. So make your double crochet in the very first space, and then continue the sequence as indicated in the pattern, which is your decrease in here between the stitch and the chain space, and you're going to repeat the same thing all the way around until you get to the other side of the blanket where you started with the new color. So go all the way across the top, and then on this other side as well, all the way down until you get all the way around your blanket. You're gonna repeat everything on the side and the top as well. Once we're here and we did our last chain 3, we're going to join the round with a slip stitch in the very first chain in here. So insert your hook in that chain and slip stitch to join the round, and we have completed round 1 of the blanket. Now we need 2 more and we're done. So you're gonna snip the yarn and bring the next corresponding color, which in my case is the creamy one, and we're going to join the yarn to continue working just with a slip stitch like that, and you're gonna chain 3. We have 1, 2, 3, and you're gonna continue the same sequence, the exact same thing that we did at the top and the bottom edging of the blanket with the peaks and valleys, with the double crochet as well. We're not doing eyelets or anything, it's pure double crochets all the way around. So now continue working. We have our decrease and then 1 double crochet per stitch available all the way up to your next peak, and then down to the valley until we get to the next corner. So here we have the next peak, and we're gonna do it again. It is a double crochet in that chain space, chain 2, and another double crochet in the same chain space. We have created the peak. Now let's continue going down until we get to the valley. The 2 stitches before the marker or the middle of the valley is a decrease. Then we make our double crochet in that middle stitch where we marked with the stitch marker. Put your stitch marker again so you don't forget, and then another decrease in the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, decrease, and now you're gonna continue doing this all the way across the top of your blanket just with double crochets until we get to the next corner, and I'm gonna show you there how that looks like. When you get to the next corner, we're gonna do what we have been doing, which is the decrease and then the last double crochet before the chain 3. So we have 1 double crochet, decrease, 2, we have 3 loops, pull the yarn through the 3 loops, and then make the last double crochet as normal. Then you're going to chain 3 to create the corner again. 1, 2, 3. Turn your blanket slightly, and now in that chain 3 space from the previous round, you're going to make 3 double crochets. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And now you're gonna continue with the double crochets as per usual. 1 double crochet per stitch available all the way around, and you're gonna repeat as well on the next corner and all the way around your blanket. Remember, this time we're making 1 double crochet per stitch available, nothing else than that. Once we get to the next corner, we're going to make the 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3 in that chain 3 space. Then we're gonna chain 3 to create the corner again. And then we're going to start on the other side of the blanket with the peaks and valleys. Remember that we begin with 1 double crochet in that very first stitch, and then we have the decrease between the next 2 stitches. And now you can continue going across as indicated in the pattern as we have been doing, all the way up the peaks and valleys. and all the way around your blanket. You're gonna repeat the same sequence until you get to the other side. So here I am at the end. I did my 3 chains, and now to join the round, I'm going to slip stitch in the very first chain that we made, and we have this slip stitch. Now you're going to repeat the round 2, all the way around again, and that's gonna be your last round. So the round that we just did, do it one more time, and then you are all done. Then you can cut your yarn, fasten off, and you're done with the blanket. And that is it, everyone. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's lesson and that you learned how to make the beautiful border. Now you have a little bit of homework to do. You have to do 8 rows at the top, 8 rows at the bottom, and then 3 rounds around, all the way around your blanket. So you have a little bit to do this week. If there's something that was missing that you don't understand or that I didn't explain properly, go ahead and check out the Facebook group where we will be answering all of your questions, and we're sharing progress pictures and everything. I love seeing your progress pictures, so please share that with the community, and I'll see you in the next week with the last video for the Joann Stitch Along. Bye, everyone!